Hi, good evening. My name's Jonathan Mizzi. I'm a father to two young girls, Maya and Olivia. I'm a husband. I'm an architect with a background in film, visual effects, and animation. And I grew up living between Malta and London. And when COVID hit, my family and I, we moved back here to be back with all of our families, and we're still here. Today, I'm here to talk about a problem. Humanity's greatest problem that it's ever faced, a human-driven problem, and that of our climate crisis. The pressures that we are now putting on our planet's natural processes are now threatening our very own existence, and that of all of our shared planet's biodiversity. I'm sure you've all heard, it's code red for humanity. I'm here to talk about solutions that we must implement now here, and the relationship between local to global solutions. I'm here to talk about how we must adapt to the climate that is coming and to a large part is already here. In the words of Hippocrates, we must declare the past, diagnose the present to foretell the future. It's about converting hindsight into creative foresight and embracing hope, because it is hope that drives all action. A quick recap of how we got ourselves here. In the last 4.2 billion years of evolution, and from the dawn of man to modern civilization as we know it, it's only been in the last 10,000 years where humanity has really thrived. And we've gone from hunter-gatherers to farmers, to the development of our agriculture, to our industrial revolution. All because we've been living in this Goldilocks zone for the last 11,000 years, where our average temperature hasn't moved from -1 to +1 degrees in an interglacial period beyond an ice age. And that stability has given us seasonality, predictable weather, and it's allowed us to go on a huge flourish of a journey of innovation. What started us off as a necessity for shelter quickly turned into a huge world of imagination. We invented engineers for spirituality, community, ambition, and implementation. We reached for the skies, and we got there. We reached for the moon, and we got there. And this is the first ever photo taken of planet Earth in 1968. And it's ironic that the same energy that accelerated, that allowed us to defy the laws of gravity and reach one of our technological greatest human achievements, is now what's causing us to potentially go extinct. The carbon dioxide emissions, predominantly from our fossil fuels, and from that same decade, 50s, 60s onwards, is taking us now out into a new epoch, into the Anthropocene, into temperatures that humanity as we know it do not know what's coming. It is a very different future that lies ahead, and we're already feeling the effects at plus 1.23 degrees in the last 2 years. Just this year alone, hitting home, Turkey, Greece, Italy. Just last week, the Medicanes in Sicily and the floods. It is a crisis like none other humanity has ever faced. The scientists have been telling us this for 30 years. And they're now telling us that what we do in this decade will likely determine the future of our species. And why has nothing happened? And why is it getting worse when we've known this? And that is because there's a distinct difference between knowing and understanding. And I'd like to talk to you about my personal journey of going from knowing to understanding, which took 25 years. Believe me, if we all lived through Hurricane Katrina, we would be acting like our house is on fire. In 1996, I watched Waterworld, a dystopian vision of the future of the polar caps melted. Survival of the fittest at sea through pirate warfare. And that really stuck with me. And when I went to architecture school in London in 2002, I explored how we could live at sea peacefully and in calm communities. And I think I was also missing the seas back home in Malta. And then in 2006, I furthered my knowledge by watching Inconvenient Truth. And an analogy that Al Gore presented always stuck with me. If you throw a frog into a boiling pan of water, it's going to jump out and survive. If you put one in a cold pan and you slowly bring it to a boil, the frog will boil alive. And that's what's happening to us here. And then when COVID hit, my wife and I, we packed up our bags and we left West London, a home we loved, And we're very fortunate that our in-laws had a really cute townhouse for us in Old College Street, ironically also called London. And we got to experience snippets of such beauty. I mean, Notting Hill on steroids with the sea and warmer temperatures. But it was snippets, I'm afraid. What we quickly soon realized was that we had swapped a city, a low-lying city of 2 to 5 stories, for a fast-growing metropolis of concrete, cement, cranes. The abolishment and rape of our heritage. Too often my windscreens would be like this. And too often I would encounter this on the roads.
Thank you very much. Cancer, here we come.
And then I watched this documentary, Breaking Boundaries, in July. And if you haven't seen it, please watch it. In 75 minutes, it completely concisely explains the pressures that we are putting on our planet and how we are fast approaching tipping points of irreversible change. And that's when it dawned on me. Our beautiful, beautiful island of Malta. Believe me, I genuinely love Malta. I'm not here to bash it. But the next statement is true, that we have fast become a microcosm of the devastation mankind can wreak upon its planet, whilst exhibiting the frictions upon society that overpopulation can cause on finite land mass, which is what our island is, finite island, 14.5 kilometers wide, which is what planet Earth is, 12,742 kilometers wide. A finite sphere, 70% water, 30% land. There is no planet B. In 50 years, we've gone from this to this. And now Gozo, every last drop we are taking. A home to ugliness, of consumerism, greed, ignorance, lack of foresight, and a growing population. So how do we design ourselves out of this? And the thing is, we can. And what can Malta do? We can lead. Look what we did with COVID. When we got our act together, we're here now, today, all together, where other parts of the world are still in lockdown. The beauty of a microcosm is if you can solve a microcosm, you can solve the bigger picture. We need to do 5 things as humanity. We need to cut down our emissions and limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. At the same time, we need to draw down on that heat because it's still going to be there, and we do that through afforestation and managing our carbon sinks, our oceans, our soils. We address our overpopulation by sustaining it through circular living in a circular economy, and we must start to adapt and become more resilient, even emotionally. That's what I'm here today to present to you, solutions that have come about through problems I've experienced whilst living here. As a studio, we've always sought to connect humanity to nature. We do our best to build in harmony with nature. We do it through nature-led form and carbon-sequestering materials from sustainably sourced forests, with a key focus on emotional sustainability. It is the power of the art within architecture that can breed a sense of belonging, a sense of community, of identity, of heritage, of culture. And in 2011, I witnessed an absolute tragic loss of culture. I was driving, and I got stuck driving behind one of Boris Johnson's blue bendy buses. And ironically, I wasn't in London. I was here in Malta. And that's when it dawned on me that I looked around, and there was a distinct lack of color on our roads. Our pride and joy of our Maltese bus fleet, one of our biggest national emblems, had just disappeared. They were decommissioned. An icon that connected our whole island overnight. Just gone, just like that. And London also had the same issue. They had a double-decker bus. And they realized through hindsight that they could carry on that spirit. And I thought, my God, we've got to do this. And not only that, we had such a more beautiful fleet than they did. And I said, okay, let's capture the essence into one design. And by studying them, I realized that they were all a family of siblings. And like siblings, they shared key genetic features. The hooded windscreens that gave them these cute puppy dog eyes, smiling chrome bumpers, angel wing references, hooded headlamps, and the bare feel, the pinstriping, which I like to think is the mascara that really just further articulated their anatomy. They were like Pixar characters. And we transposed that DNA onto a modern-day chassis with a clean electric motor. And 8 years later, and with the help of Stargate Studios and my dear friend Francis Gershi, who's here with us tonight, we launched a Malta bus reborn, and this is it. What started off as a heritage problem for me quickly became an environmental issue for me, and I became absolutely obsessed about infrastructure. I said, what is the point of creating a beautiful new bus fleet if it's just going to constantly be stuck in traffic? And I said, well, how can we solve this? And the irony is that if we all switch to public transport, we'd be so much better off, because a car takes up 15 square meters of space. Bumper to bumper, up to 30 square meters. A bus can take 40 individual passenger cars. That's about 1,000 square meters of space. All of these cars that are disappearing right now fit directly into those buses. Now, we're not just going to get up one day and make that shift, because we don't rely on the transport. How can we create that trusted reliability? And there is really genuinely a simple way. And if we were bold enough to give a dedicated bus lane across all of our primary arterial roads, and I'm not just talking about a bitcha on the Slema Strand, then what we would have is your metro right there. This is a rapid bus transport system, which is identical to a metro. What is a metro? It is a carriage that carries passengers directly in an undisturbed line, but it does it underground. A rapid bus transport system does it above the ground, in the light and the air, and we can do it without digging our own graves for the next 20 years. I know which lane I'd rather be in here. And then I said, what else could we do? Well, we can green our routes. And what about other forms of transport? What about our cyclists? Don't they have a right to safe passage? Where do they fit within this picture? And I said, well, what if we give them center stage and reclaim our concrete center strips and give them the skies? And we build for them off-site safe passage and a structure that is inspired by nature, a tree canopy line. Tree canopy line that in turn takes more cars off the road. What we're doing here is we are harnessing the power of the sun and giving clean energy back to the grid. We're harnessing the power, harnessing water and growing a clean green line to clean our airs and a home for our pollinators and our bees and our insects and our lizards. This sits within a rapid bus transport system and a shared car lane, which in 20 years will be autonomous and further brings cars down. And this is what it would feel like being on the canopy line. And this is what it would feel like driving underneath. The reduction of cars is a seriously exciting thing. I actually come from a family who imports a lot of cars to Malta. So the fact that I'm here, I think, says enough. We have 420,000 cars on this island. That is 5 million square meters of vehicles that are parked for 96% of their life doing nothing. If you couple that with our lanes, that's tens of thousands of green parks and fields that we can bring back to our lives. Let's look at secondary roads and our high streets. This is Hamrun High Street and what it could become. Cyclists now have their own safe passage at ground level, as do pedestrians, safely demarcated by green trees that offer shade. Buses now share a lane with cars, And we still have a lane for parking bays. Let's look at another street, Dingley Street, Sliema, and what that could look like. And let's talk about adaptation to extreme heat. This is your standard summer day at 37 degrees. Look at the temperature change. Trees and shade and transpiration can bring it down by 10 degrees. In the case of conducting metals, exponentially. Sicily almost hit 50 degrees this summer. In our heat waves of 2050, we could be looking at 55 degrees. This is a case of survival. What if we take the car out of the car park? We can create parks. Let's look at Floriana Car Park. Instantly, we have a park. Note that we still retain space for parks, for cars, but as our reliance slows down, we can continue to rewild. Our national university and a hospital can now have a park, and think about the health benefits that we could get. Now, cars will always play an important role, and I'm really excited about the future of electrification, especially when they eventually couple up with renewable energy. That's when they truly are clean. And I'm really excited to unveil concepts of Malta's first hybrid charging station, which is happening. We're going to have the first super fast chargers on the island with an aim to phase out fossil fuel power. And the best thing is we're going to be building it out of natural fiber composites, which is linen, just like the shirt I'm wearing. You can take this canopy, throw it in the sea, and it will biodegrade. All of the things I've shown you today are examples of how we, as humanity, can adapt and how we can phase things in gradually with minimal impact and disruption to our lives. They're examples of how we can fight climate change through cutting our emissions and drawing down our emissions. In 2100, life here could look pretty bleak for us. 70% of our youth voted to leave. Why should we leave our own country, our own home? And it's not just about survival, it's about the manner in which we can survive. In the words of Dr. Jane Goodall, we cannot live in harmony together without learning to live in harmony with nature. We must rewild our urban environment. We can design ourselves out of this, and we must. We must for our children and our children's children, and for all life on Earth. Thank you very much.